What up, y'all? Dev, SBMTG, like it a magic, the whole spiel, you know by now. But we got a short, chill video today, not too high in production value, as you can tell. But I think it's going to be an interesting thing to talk about, and hopefully it's going to be an interesting thing to hear about. Our subject today is these retro frame artifacts from the Brothers War. I really didn't get much of a chance to talk about these during spoiler season, because they just kept releasing a million of them every day. I think there's 60 plus of these things, and videos were already like an hour long during spoiler season. I didn't want them to get any longer, so I figured I would just wait till the end of the season and do a video about these. So that's kind of what I'm doing today. I'm not going to talk about all 60, 2 or 3 of these in this one video, because a lot of these I don't think will be super impactful, but there are some that I think are worth taking a look at to maybe buy. There are some that I think you probably almost shouldn't buy, definitely, right now at least. And then another that I think is just kind of an interesting one to look at, and I'm not really sure if you should buy it or not. But along with that go a couple of trends that I've noticed that we'll kind of cover as we move through the cards today. But let's go ahead and get to it. Let's talk about like 5 cards I'd buy, 3 cards I wouldn't, and another one I'm a little on the fence about. But we'll start with Mind Tome. Now, there's a lot of reasons why I picked the cards that I'm interested in, and this is probably the most honorable mention-y of the cards in the 5 that I am thinking about buying from this set. The entire reason I'm thinking about buying this retro frame one is for Cube. I think it's a really good card for Cube. Almost all different kinds of cubes. This card goes really, really well in, and I especially like how this card wears a retro frame. There's a few like that today, but I just think this card looks really good in a retro frame, and for that reason, aesthetics alone and Cube, those 2 reasons, I'm really interested in this card, especially considering the price on other versions of it and the fact that there aren't a whole lot of versions of it. And we'll see that as we move through some of these cards today, but Mind Tome is the first I can say that about, that there aren't any promos or secret layer drops or alternate art or anything like that versions of this card besides basically the original core set one, the promo pack, which doesn't really count, the extended art, which doesn't really count. You know, all cards get those now, so in this day and age. So basically the retro frame and the schematic are the only special prints of this card, and I think that matters a little bit too. So I just like the way the retro frame looks a lot more than I like the way the newer frame looks on it. But aside from that, we see a couple of interesting trends here. First of all, if you look at the schematic, you'll see the market price is a little over 60 cents, but all the listings start at 69 cents. That's not nice. Usually you want the listings to start lower than the market price. But despite the number, not super nice. But we'll see that trend occur with a few of the schematics, especially, that we'll look at today, that the market price will be one number, and then the listings will start higher than that. That's an interesting inversion. I guess the market price hasn't caught up in a lot of cases yet, because even the listed median is much higher than the market price in a lot of these cases, especially with the schematics. Now, another thing I want to point out that isn't as indicative with Mind Tome as we'll see on some of these other cards, but it's still worth pointing out. You'll see that the market price on a normal core set 2021 Mind Tome is 71 cents. Interesting thing about that is that the retro frame one has a market price of 90 cents. Now, the listings for this card, the retro frame, start at 50 cents, and most listings are 50 to 54 cents. There are foils available for 52 cents if you click on this link. Not bad price, especially the foil for 52 cents. That's a pretty good price. When it comes to this Mind Tome, you see that it says the listings start at 15 cents. That is not true. These listings actually start at around 50 cents and go up to 65 cents pretty quickly. Yeah, 52, 55, 65, 65, 67. Now, those are all for like near mint and lightly played copies of the card. So you'll note that this original printing right here, the Core Set 2021, has a market price of 71 cents, but most sellers on TCG Player are selling it for below the market price, and that started around the time that the retro frame got announced. You'll see here, if we look at the price graph, that the price of the card over the last month, the normal version, not the foil, has trended ever so slightly downwards. I say ever so slightly, but yeah, it's actually trended about 50 cents downward in this case, which is, 60% of the value of the card, or 40% of the value of the card, its starting price. So That's interesting. Not all of these cards that got a retro frame have done this. Some have actually gone up or gone down and then rebounded. We'll see a couple like that later, but it's not necessarily uncommon to see this result right here, where since the retro frame was announced, the original printing has gone down, which is usually, I think, a good thing. A lot of collectors don't think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing, but it's not like we really needed price controls on Mind Tome. My point here was to say, you know, A, there's not a lot of special printings of this card. This is just about the only one. That's a reason to pick it up. It's great for cube. It's even good in some like Commander artifact decks, but there's usually better ways to use that slot. All that said, though, I think there's a few reasons to pick up this card, and I think there's a few things that I've tried to illustrate already that this card is indicative of in terms of some trends that we'll see as we move through the video. Now, next, let's look at Inspiring Statuary. This is a more important card in Commander, at least, than Mind Tome. This actually does see some Commander play. And for what it's worth, it sees play in other formats, pre-standard, post-modern formats and stuff like Pioneer and whatnot. You'll occasionally see this card, so it's also cubable too for what that's worth, and to me that is actually worth something. But this is another card that wears a retro frame really, really well. I like the way this thing looks in just the normal retro frame kind of a lot, and right now the direct price is 85 cents for a copy, which is relatively low. And then all of these copies here, 85 cents, 93 cents, 96 cents, $1.85, so it jumps after a few sellers. All things considered, though, the average price of this card near mint for the first few sellers, and all of these have shipping on free on orders over $5, are $1, and then it jumps to $2. The thing about that is that the Ether Revolt, there it is, the Ether Revolt Inspiring Statuary has a market price of $3.35. Now listings are as low as $2.75, and this one isn't quite like Mind Tome. It hasn't lost a whole lot of value since the schematic and retro frames versions were announced or anything. Most of the listings are around market price. But what's interesting about this one is that, again, I think that the retro frame, all in all, just looks better than the than the original printing of the card. And this is one of the very, very few, I think this is noteworthy too, this is one of the very, very few schematics that you can end up getting for less than the original printing. I know that sounds nuts. And as we get into some of the older cards that needed reprints really badly, that won't necessarily be the case. But very often you'll note that the statuaries, the schematics are some of the most expensive versions of cards that you can buy. That's not true, though, here. The original printing is still worth more than the schematic somehow. And the schematic looks really good. Just like Mind Tome, this is basically the only alternate printing of this card that exists. Again, there's no secret layers, there's no promos, there's no alternate art, there's no special versions. This is it. So I think this is a pretty good pickup. The only alternate version of this card that you can buy, it's Commander playable, and for some reason it is less in both the schematic and the retro frame than the original printing, which is not incredibly common, especially for the schematic, to be less expensive. So I'd consider picking this up. Again, cube players would like this, some Commander players are going to like this, and I think it looks really good in the retro frame. That is subjective. Not everybody likes the retro frames, but this is one, again, that I think wears one very well. But let's keep moving here, because again, I want this video to be shorter than it's panning out to be. But Mesmeric Orb is the next one that I want to look at. Mesmeric Orb is interesting. You can't see the schematic. It's covered up by my head. But let's actually sort, instead of by relevance, let's sort from high to low so we can get a better picture of this. This is one of those where the schematic is the most expensive version of the card you can buy. Ironically, or conversely, I guess, the least expensive version of this card you can buy right now is just the normal retro frame, which is kind of interesting, you know, from Mirrodin, the original printing of the card. You can get it as low as $10. The market price is $11.50. This retro frame, you can get it as low as $8. The market price is $9.50. So you're getting basically a $2 discount on the retro frame, which in my opinion looks better anyway, and is probably, I'm not 100% sure about this, but is very likely a more scarce printing than this. But you're getting into sets like Mirrodin, and Mirrodin's not a super old set, but it's not a very new set either. So if you wanted the original printing of Mesmeric Orb, I imagine it will likely hold value, right? So there's that. And some people are into this original Mesmeric orb. It does look good, don't get me wrong. But if you're one of the people that likes the retro frames more anyway, I don't see a reason not to just pick up this Mesmeric orb. Not only because I think it looks better, but again, I think that the quantity of them are going to be somewhat more scarce. So keep that in mind. I guess also I should point out that the schematic one is the most expensive version, but it's not really that much more expensive than, you know, a Mirrodin Mesmeric orb. But that's one that I would pick up the schematic of, because again, you basically get a discount and you're kind of getting a more collectible version of the card. Again, Mesmeric orb is one that there just really aren't a whole lot of printings of outside of the Double Masters one, and no alternate printings of outside of this one. So I think that's worth pointing out too. But the next card that I want to look at is Mind's Eye. This one does have a special printing. It's got a masterpiece printing, which is like $40, but masterpieces were extremely scarce, to say the least. I don't think these are going to be anywhere near as scarce, obviously. The serialized ones, the serial numbers probably will be. You'll note as we move through that a lot of times there's not even a picture. Hey, Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Yep, there it is. Mind's Eye schematic, serial numbered, not even a picture of it, market price unavailable, out of stock. That's how a lot of the serialized ones are, you know. But when it comes to Mind's Eye specifically, this is another one where the retro frame version of it is the least that you'll spend on this card, and it looks really, really good. I mean, again, you can get the original Mirrodin one. It's the only one with this cool art, and you can get it for $5, which is only like $1 more than this one. So you can do that if you want. Now, this is one of those cards where there's interesting relationships between the market price and what sellers are actually selling it as. You'll see here, the market price on retro frame is just a hair under $5, and the market price on the Mirrodin Mind's Eye is $7.79, almost $8. So there's like a $3 difference in the market price. But you'll note that in terms of what people are actually listing the cards for, $4, $5, only $1 difference, and a lot of sellers are selling Mind's Eye anywhere between $5 and $6. So really not that much difference, really, between what you can actually really get an original printing of Mind's Eye for and what you can get a retro frame printing for. But, however, there is a massive discrepancy in the market price. So keep that in mind. I'm not sure if the market price has not caught up yet with what most sellers are selling these cards for. The listed median is still going to be somewhere around here, because there's going to be a lot of sellers trying to get that much for them, but they won't get that much for them. The smart sellers are going ahead and cutting their prices on some of these cards, and Mind's Eye is one of them, and we'll see a few that also fit that bill in just a second. But, you know, the Commander Arsenal Mind's Eye, which only comes in foil, is $8 with a market price of $11.64. Most sellers are selling it for $8 to $9. So again, close to 20% off market price in most seller storefronts at this point. But again, I should just point out that the retro frame version of Mind's Eye is the cheapest way you can possibly get a Mind's Eye, and it still looks really good. I think this is probably a decent buy. You know, relatively sought after commander card that hasn't gotten all the printings in the world, although it has gotten some, right? But the last one I want to look at is, I think, the biggest slam dunk out of all of these, and it's Helm of the Host. I would buy this card. Like, I think I am going to buy this card today at some point, because note that the retro frame printing of this card is, again, the cheapest way you can possibly get your hands on a Helm of the Host, which is pretty nuts when you think about it. I love the way this card looks in a retro frame. It's going to be way more scarce than the Dominaria version, because Dominaria was opened. This is one of the most open sets the last 5 years or so. So there are many copies of Helm of the Host in the world. It's not saturated with Helms, but a lot of Dominaria was open. There's a lot of Helms out there. This is going to be much more scarce than that Helm. And the market price is literally half of the Dominaria Helm of the Host for the retro frame. So this, I think, is a massively, just like, again, slammed 360 windmill kind of pick in terms of, you know, what retro frames you should be looking at to buy right now. Market price might be $7.86. Most listings are around $7. When it comes to Helm of the Host, this is another one that's inverted. The Dominaria printing, the market price is $14.41. Most sellers are selling it at $10 or $11. So again, most sellers are offloading this well below the market price in this case, 30% below market price, which is close to 50% below market price, which is pretty crazy. The other thing I want to point out here is that I'll actually look at the schematic for this one too, like Inspiring Statuary. The market price is less than the market price for a normal Helm of the Host from Dominaria. But this one is one that's kind of weirdly inverted, right? You can get a Dominaria helm for $10. Market price $14.41. You can get a retro frame helm for $12. That's more than $10 if you're doing the math. But the market price is less. And you'll note that kind of weird inversion on some of these schematics if you look through the set. But I think that 12 for the schematic is actually a pretty decent price. I do. Schematic looks beautiful, looks great in a retro frame. But even if you're just going for this original art in the normal retro frame, again, $7 is a pretty good price for a Helm of the Host. It's like $3 off a Helm of the Host. And it looks better and it's more scarce. So again, I just don't, this one seems like the most obvious. You should probably pick it up. It's one of the most popular commander cards of the last few years. So I think that one will not only hold value, but go up. But again, I don't know that for sure. Let's look at some cards that I probably wouldn't buy. Starting with Gilded Lotus, I put a slash in there for some reason. Why did I do that? But Gilded Lotus, there's a few reasons I wouldn't do this one. Now, if you go down here, you'll note that, again, like a lot of these, retro frame is the cheapest Gilded Lotus you can possibly buy. By the way, this one actually does have a price for a serial numbered one. Somebody is listing one for $950 for a serial numbered Gilded Lotus. That's ridiculous. But anyway, as far as this schematic, or not schematic, but just regular retro frame Gilded Lotus, it looks like a pretty good deal. It does, but unlike a lot of these other cards we've already talked about, there are A, plenty of printings of Gilded Lotus already, and B, there are already alternate printings of the card. It just got an alternate printing in Warhammer, which is only like $250 for probably what's going to end up being a relatively scarce card from a collector's point of view. Also, the original Gilded Lotus from Mirrodin up here is $3, market price $7.24. You'll notice the one from 2013 is similar, right? $250, market price $4.38. Not as much of a discrepancy, but still a lot of sellers are offloading older, Mirrodin 2013 Gilded Lotuses at a well below market price for even lightly played and near mint versions of this card. So usually you can find a copy of Gilded Lotus as an original for just much lower than what the market price would normally indicate. And that's what I would pick up. If I was in the mood to buy a Gilded Lotus, I would just buy this one for $3 from Mirrodin. Or conversely, I would buy this Secret Lair drop one. Now I know that the ear wings on this angel lady might really put some people off, but this one is direct for $7 and you can get one for as low as $4.50. That is really not, those aren't bad deals. Now I know that the retro frame one is $1.50, which is less, but you can get, in terms of the Secret Lair one, this one is super scarce, and it's more likely to jump in value than a lot of other printings of the card, or at least not jump isn't the right word, but more likely to slowly trend up in value than other versions of the card. You can also get this From the Vault 20 printing, which is not only beautiful, but also relatively scarce, because From the Vault 20 was obviously not very circulated. So I think that there are multiple printings of this card, multiple alternate printings of this card that I end up kind of liking more, that are ultimately either going to be more scarce or look better or going to be more sought after by other collectors. So I'm just not sure Gilded Lotus is what you want to be spending your money on, but I will acknowledge that $1.50 for a Gilded Lotus with this frame is not the worst deal in the world. But there's just so many other versions of it that I would be more keen on getting a copy of for Commander or Cube or whatever. So that's the first one I want to look at, but that's kind of the honorable mention for this section. The other two, I think I can make more, not only better points with, but I just think that they're more interesting cards to look at. So let's look at Ultra Dementia here. You'll see that the retro frame is a little less than $4 in terms of what it's listed as. The market price is a little over $5, and that is the absolute least you're going to get an Ultra Dementia for. This card does not have a lot of printings. It's got one in Conspiracy and one in Modern Horizons, and people still yell at Wizards to reprint this card, and they did. They gave us one in this set. Obviously not in the main set. Not standard playable. That would be incredible. I would love to play Ultra in standard. But still, it's not going to come up much Opening an altar of dementia, I think, is going to be a somewhat rare occasion, you know. So this is a pretty scarce little card from a collector's point of view. But this is another one where, even though there is some discrepancy in the price, I would go ahead and pick up original Tempest Altar of Dementia right now, way before I would pick up the retro frame. There's a few reasons for that. You'll see the market price on Altar is $17. There are 124 listings, which is a lot for an Altar right now. So a lot of people are trying to dump the card, is what I'm getting at. Usually for Altar, there are, because I've been looking at a lot of TCG players lately, the last like 6 months. Usually there are like less than 100 listings for Altar. So a lot of sellers are trying to dump this card right now, and it's at $7.79 for the lowest, but a lot of sellers are selling this for $10. Matter of fact, I think the direct listing is $10. Yes, the direct listing, which is usually around market price, is less than $10. And the seller's trying to get rid of 3 at this price. Lightly played, too. Not even moderately played or heavily played. Lightly played original Tempest for, 70% off of the... Well, not 70%, but, just this huge percentage off the market price. And that, again, is the direct listing, which means there are going to be a lot of sellers down here selling it for way less than the market price. See, all of these on this page. Yep. All of these on this page, less than $10. So I would, faced with the prospect of $4 or $5 Ultra Dementia with retro frame, or $8 to $10 retro frame, or $8 to $10 original Tempest Altar all day. I just don't think, even though you're spending twice as much, I think that that's an extra $4 very well spent if you just buy the original version. And it may trend back up. It's done a weird thing. This is a weird graph to look at. Over the last month, the card has done this thing where it was announced to be a retro frame and then dipped pretty heavily. Dipped 60 to 80 cents or so. And then it's come back up from 1660 to about 1710 there, 1705 or so. So the card's been fluctuating wildly. That probably, now it's flatlined a little bit over the last few days, but that probably means the card is going to be inching back up in value. I would buy this for this low price while you can, because it's a really important commander card, obviously. And it goes great in cubes for what that's worth. But yeah, again, I would pick up the original Ashnod's Altar and not the retro frame. But after a few months go by, if the price on the original goes back up and the price on the retro frame stays stable at like $5, that's going to end up being a good buy. It is. But let's look at the last card that I probably wouldn't buy. And it's along similar lines. It's the other Altar that got printed in a retro frame, which is Ashnod's Altar. Now, we go down here. I feel like a broken record, but again, this is the cheapest you'll pick up an Ashnod's Altar is the retro frame, and it looks pretty good, too, in this frame. This is art from what edition? It's up here somewhere. It's art from Eternal Masters and Mystery Boosters in a retro frame, and for my money, it looks better in a retro frame than it does in a modern frame. So I don't think this is a terrible pickup, but I still wouldn't buy it right now, again, for similar reasons. Market price is $643. Listings start around market price in this case, $582. However, you'll note that you can get a Chronicles or 5th edition or Classic 6th edition Ashnod's Altar for really not that much more. Now, let's look at how this card has trended, because I actually think this card, too, has gone up since it was announced. Let's take a look. Yep, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. So, October the 29th or the 30th, somewhere in there, October 31st, it says. This card dipped to just about its lowest point, and it's gone up multiple dollars since then, right? So the card was a little over $10, and now the market price is a little under, or right at, it's a little under $14. So in the last, 10 days, in the last week and a half, the card has rebounded $3. So I think that now is probably the time to buy it before it continues to rebound. The direct listing is $14.69, which is kind of a lot. But you'll see down here that you can get, moderately played, lightly played for effectively $9. Lightly played for $9. Moderately played $9.25. Moderately played $9.25. So, and that's just Chronicles. That's not, 5th or 6th edition, which tend to be even cheaper. So again, I would just pick up a Chronicles Ashnod's Altar before I would pick up a copy of this, because this is probably going to be, the Chronicles one's probably going to be slightly more sought after. The 5th edition one's going to be slightly more sought after. They're older prints. I will say, however, that this may be, the retro frame may end up being a more scarce print when it's all said and done. And I don't know how quickly it's going to gain or lose value or anything like that. But I do know that Ashnod's Altar crashed a little bit. The older printings of it crashed a little bit when it was first announced to be a retro frame card. But it's rebounding fast. So if you still want to get in and get this card for like less than $10, on average, I mean, all of these prices are less, the listings are less than $10 for an Ashnod's Altar, which is pretty amazing. I'm letting you know right now. So again, I would spend a couple of extra bucks and just pick up an older printing of the card with better. This is the art. This is the art for Ashnod's Altar, not this. The retro, that's, I know it's been on a couple of cards, been on Eternal Masters. That's not the art for Ashnod's Altar. This is the art for Ashnod's Altar, which is another reason, by the way, that these versions of the cards are going to hold more value, is because this is the art for Ashnod's Altar. But anyway, you can also, I want to point this out too, you can also get an Ashnod's Altar from Antiquities for less than $20 right now. And $20 is a lot to spend on a piece of cardboard. But yeah, heavily played, not damaged, heavily played for a little over $20. Heavily played for 22 with shipping included. And I think that these are actually really good prices for an Antiquities Ashnod's Altar too. And I wanted to point that out. But there's one more card that I want to bring up today. And there are a few interesting things about this one that put me on the fence about it. It's Mishra's Bauble. Now let's do something real quick. Let's go to TCG Player. Let's open another tab. And let's go to Brothers War. And then let's filter. I have to make my screen smaller to do this. Let's filter for retro frame artifacts. Now, we've got market high to low. Let's filter at first for relevance, and let's look at what we get. Look at that, Mishra's Bauble. By TCG Player's estimation, this is the most relevant card in this little set of cards. Now, if we go best-selling, right after Mox Amber, really, yeah, it's Mishra's Bauble schematic after this Mox Amber, and then it's schematic Mox Amber, and then regular Mishra's Bauble. So Mox Amber and Mishra's Bauble are apparently selling like hotcakes in this set. So in terms of relevance, whatever that means to TCG Player, it's the top card, and it's also the second best selling card in this set. So apparently a lot of people are turned on to this. A lot of people are buying it right now, but I'm not sure it's the right time to do that. This is yet another case where I would probably just buy the original Cold Snap version of this card. I mean, look how much the listings have inverted here. You know, market price, $12, still $12 market price for a bauble. Listings as low as $5. And if we go in, we'll see that the direct listing is $8, which is still almost $4 less than market price, which is pretty amazing. You know, heavily played for $5, heavily played for $6, shipping included. And it's basically $6 here too, because 99-cent shipping. So $6, a little over $6, $7. So a lot of these listings are well, and I mean well below the market price. So this is another one that it looks like a lot of people are trying to offload. 273 listings, 352 listings, just ridiculous amounts of listings for Mishra's Bauble right now. A lot of people are offloading older versions of this card. And again, I think it's probably just better to get the one from Cold Snap in most cases, you know. But maybe not. Maybe not. That's why I'm on the fence about this one. Because for about the same price as the original printing, you can just get the retro frame, which to me looks better for your Commander deck, your Cube, your Legacy deck, like whatever you want. This card sees play in a lot of different formats. It's basically 0 mana draw card, so it's pretty good. You know, it's half of a bill if you play Pokemon. 0 mana draw 2 cards. It's a 0 mana draw 1. That tends to be very good. It's also almost a scry in a way, but Mishra's Bauble is a very good card. Sees play in a number of formats. Basically a free card, you know. So it all kind of depends on subjective value here. Do you value the original printing of the card? Do you really like Cold Snap? Do you want an original Mishra's Bauble? Does it matter to you? Or would you rather have this one, which is probably more scarce? Although, that's close. Because for a sequel to one of the most beloved Magic sets of all time, you know, Cold Snap's a sequel to Ice Age. For a sequel to Ice Age, Cold Snap was not actually opened that much, and if I'm not mistaken, its print run wasn't limited, obviously, but its print run was less than a lot of other sets. Either that or stores didn't order as many of it. One of those things is true. I don't think that many stores ordered as much Cold Snap. I think Time Spiral was the next set, and that set got 8. Oh, everybody loved Time Spiral. But Cold Snap was not as successful, and I don't think that as many copies of this card got opened. As some of the other sets, you know, like we said, like Helm of the Host Dominaria got opened like crazy, you know. Cold Snap, not as much. So there's a few factors that go into this. But ultimately, if I was going to buy one of these, I would probably just buy the original. I love retro frames. They look really good to me, and I'm looking at buying a bunch of them. I'm looking at buying a bunch of like 20 cents. Like I want Foundry Inspector as a retro frame because it's like 20 cents and it looks perfect. It looks right. There's a few retro frames I really like. Mishra's Bauble, on the other hand, while the original version is $5, I think I would rather pick up that, to be honest. But as we finish it up here, let's just quickly run through these listings for retro frames and just see what else we like, what else you guys like, you know, anything else that might be worth picking up. Like, for instance, Aetherflux Reservoir was down here. You may have seen that. Important in the modern, well, important in a couple, I think it's actually a Pioneer, if I'm not mistaken, but important in the Aetherflux Reservoir deck. It looks really good in the retro frame. There's a few like that. You know, Thorn of Amethyst looks great in a retro frame. Even though I think the original print is pretty close to, let's see, Thorn of Amethyst. Thorn of Garnet, Thorn of Pearl, Steven Universe references. Yeah, exactly. The retro frame looks to me much better than the Lorwyn print. And the Lorwyn print is not that much more than this. I would just take the cheaper retro print one in this case. So I think it looks much better. But, you know, aside from that, I almost talked about Mystic Forge. I think that the non-schematic version is an interesting buy right now. The schematic version is probably way too much. I'd wait for this to come down. See, the schematic version is only $4 and it looks really good, and that's comparable to the market price of some of the other Mystic Forge prints that we've seen. This one is, by the way, notice how much more the listings are than the market price. Market price $281, 10 listings as low as $4. So, you know, a pretty high percentage more in terms of what people are actually selling the card for. That's because Mystic Forge is a really popular commander card. Chromatic Lantern looks good. Soulgind Lantern is an interesting pickup in terms of retro frames. Springleaf Drum, great looking retro frame. Defense Grid, a lot less than you would get a copy of the Yours' Legacy one, and they look virtually the exact same. Phyrexian Revoker, Platinum Angel, you know, these are both really nice looking retro frame cards. Swiftfoot Boots in a retro frame for the Commander players. Staff of Domination in a retro frame for Commander players. Howling Mine is an interesting one. It's like $1.20. But I would just pick up a Howling Mine from Revised because I'm pretty sure that you can get one for about twice that. And it's just a better card to have, especially with how Revised prices are currently sort of tanking. In case you guys didn't know that, Revised dual lands have taken the biggest hit. But yeah, look at that. Howling Mine from Revised as low as $3.13. Market price $11.60 because it hasn't caught up with the Revised crash. But it has. Look at that. $14.50 to $11.50 in 3 months. Over the last month, yeah, most of that crash is in the last month. Because Revised cards just aren't. A lot of people are offloading Revised right now. Mostly because of Magic 30. Rudy has a decent video about that, actually. If you haven't seen it yet, I recommend it. But yeah, you know, $4, all heavily played. But, you know, 4. You can get one for $4. And I just think that a Revised Howling Mine is a much better buy than like a retro frame Howling Mine. But like I said, I'm not going to go through every single one of these. That would really take more time than we have, and I've already been here for 35 minutes, it says. But I think there are good buys among these, and I've already covered the ones that I think are the best buys. Now, some people might have other ideas, like this Goblin Charbelcher for $1.10 in a retro frame looks good. That's a schematic, too. Ichor Wellspring, not the schematic, but the normal Ichor Wellspring costs like 25 cents. And every other copy of Ichor Wellspring that's ever been sold costs about 25 cents, and it looks better in a retro frame. I think it's a good pickup. Scrap Trawler. This is the schematic that you see on screen right now, but the non-schematic version of this is startlingly cheap, and I think it's a great card for Commander. There's a bunch like that. Sculpting Steel right now. Just the schematic version of Sculpting Steel in a retro frame is $1.64. I think it's a great pickup because Sculpting Steel in a retro frame, like the card should be in a retro frame. It seems like the kind of card that was printed in 1993, but it wasn't. So, some of these are like Sundering Titan, kind of a bad call. I don't like this art. It's not really that much more expensive to just get an older printing of Sundering Titan. So, I could go on about this pretty much all day, but I won't. I won't waste any more of your time. Like I said, this is a fun video for me. I never get to do finance talk. I never get to do a price guide ever. So I really enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. But just let me know how you felt about the takes, what cards you would buy from this, retro frame sort of part of the set. If you wouldn't buy anything, let me know. If my picks were terrible, let me know. If my picks were good, let me know. I don't, whatever. Get at me in the comment section. And let me know kind of what you're excited about in terms of these retro frames, or even if you like retro frames in the first place. Some people don't. So to each their own. Different strokes, different folks, all that. But I'm a big fan of them, and so I wanted to kind of cover the ones that I'm interested in and the ones that I'm specifically not. So hope you enjoyed it. Just get at me down there, and I think I will finally be done with this video. I said it was going to be short. I guess that was a lie. I apologize. I'm done for this one, so I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from the Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.